The Elimination Chamber on this was February 24th here in this country. What date was it over there down under in Australia? Was it the 23rd, the 25th? What day was it over there?
I'm not certain.
We have established it's a scientific fact that time moves more slowly in Australia. Because this was the slowest moving fucking show I have ever seen in my life. And, again, what a stadium. What a set they had, and the whole truss over the ring. They have an incredible open network quality television production. It's a big league show. You can tell the new guy has brought in more network sports type fucking presentation to the production of it. I mean, there's
the production's looked incredible since Kevin Dunn left. It's been great.
Yes. I mean, it's like the difference between looking at his fucking ugly kids and his family pictures in his wallet and watching high definition color television.
It makes the show so much more bearable. It's been really good.
And the new camera angles that they've got on the ring, and part of this may have been the way that they had to shoot the stadium because it's so big, but it looks great. Not much happens. It's a big league fucking production, though. But they opened this thing up, and obviously, I don't know what the live viewership was, except for in Australia, because it was 5:00 in the morning Eastern time in the United States, but it's on Peacock, so people will catch it eventually. But goddamn, pack a lunch and devote the whole day.
We had a lot of listeners in the Cult of Cornette group because we had a thread for people who were going to watch it to make comments.
And people hung themselves with it.
There were a lot of people up. There were a lot of people apparently drinking. Still up and drinking from the night before. Their plan was to make it through the pay-per-view, and they were hit with this.
Boy, howdy, I don't know.
But you're making it sound a lot worse than it was.
Well, no, if somebody was well rested and in good health and not under the influence of any substances or chemicals and was trying to stay awake through this thing. If you were watching it live and you couldn't fast forward, that would be all right, well, let's go through it. The first match was the Women's Elimination Chamber match, and that featured Bianca versus Raquel versus Tiffany versus Liv versus Naomi versus Becky. And Brian, let me ask you a question before we talk about this.
Sound like pop stars, yeah?
Sometimes they have classic movies that are just great movies, 4-star movies, and they're well thought of, and they stand the test of time, right? And people watch them generation after generation. And sometimes they even remake those movies for a more modern audience. You've seen remakes before of classic movies.
It's hit or miss, but mostly miss.
Well, would you watch a rotten remake of a classic movie before you watched the original for the first time? Or wouldn't that spoil the original for you because you'd seen the substandard version before you'd seen the real deal? Well, let me just say this. To avoid not enjoying the men's Elimination Chamber match with 6 of the biggest individual stars in the company battling for a chance to face one of the world champions on one of the main events of one of the nights of WrestleMania, I didn't want to watch the goddamn women do it first, 2 hours beforehand. Because anything that Liv Morgan is in and emerges unharmed from cannot be dangerous in any way.
When did she become the one you hate the most? This all of a sudden emerged that you just have a problem with her.
Because it's the most preposterous. It's the most preposterous that this little tiny, minute, microscopic, girly little girl is doing all these fucking ridiculously dangerous, supposedly dangerous and deadly and body-breaking things and just walking right away from it. It exposes the whole goddamn deal for everybody.
Farmer Burns was skinny.
Yeah, Farmer Burns was skinny, but his weight was distributed a little differently than Liv Morgan's.
So you didn't watch the women's elimination match?
No, I can't. No.
It was better than the men's. It was better than the men's.
But no, it can't be, because that just means that they're doing obviously fake shit to each other in a more accomplished manner than the men.
Well, yeah.
I mean, don't want to see fucking girls in cages and girls doing hardcore garbage matches and girls whacking each other with goddamn chairs and blunt instruments, because that just calls attention to the fact it's phony when the guys do it, and the guys are the ones drawing the fucking money.
Well, the girls are the ones doing the moonsaults.
Well, and they can keep those. I can buy that a young lady of these particular people's stature can do gymnastics, not fight with goddamn martial arts weapons until one's head should be caved in.
Is part of the problem, though, even if you get past your issues in general with this match being there and why you didn't watch it, I watched it, and I enjoyed it more than the men's match. Is that a separate problem altogether? The idea that your audience would watch that match and enjoy it more than the match that leads to a main event match at WrestleMania?
Yes. Yes. And that's why I don't enjoy it, because I don't look at it from an audience standpoint. I look at it from a professional standpoint and from a promoter's standpoint. And from a guy's talent standpoint. If you have women, I'm sorry, young women of, in most cases, very frail body weight, Tiffany Stratton,
She's
Becky
not
Lynch.
Frail.
Becky Lynch she's 140 pounds. Becky Lynch is 120 pounds. She can talk. But you put them in cages and elimination chambers and furniture matches, it's ridiculous. If it doesn't kill them, it's phony. And the guys have made sure to let everybody know that it's phony too. They do too much of it, as we'll get to when we talk about AEW. And those idiots and their suicidal tendencies. But again, no, you've got 6 of the top stars in the company going for a shot at the world title in the main event at WrestleMania, so you put their exact same gimmick match on earlier with girls. Sorry. And I will say that one thing that it was proven, they are making new fans, because if you gave a wrestling fan from 40 years ago or 30 years ago or 20 years ago, maybe even 10 years ago, a 33-minute girls match when there's only 4 matches on the card, the fans would have burned the arena to the ground. Would they not?
Well, that's where we are today. We've evolved.
Yeah.
Now they could have the match and fans will either enjoy it or sit there politely and not move.
Yeah, or not walk, or not throw shit at the ring, or not set the seats on fire.
They won't even blink, it appears at times.
And basically, this match, the bell rang to start it 16 minutes into the show, and they were done at 49 minutes into the show. I started keeping track because the matches were longer than they have a roster of 100 fucking people. And they have an unlimited amount of money, not because Tony and his rich father, but because they're making billions and they're worth billions. Fly a few extra people to goddamn Australia. They had 4 matches on the card. They were all half an hour long or close to or over. And then there'd be stretches of 20 and 30 minutes in between matches where you got Australian tourism videos and fucking packages and commercials and goddamn gaga and entrances and flashy drone shots. And people are up at 6:30 in the morning trying to get through this live? Fucking hell. So anyway.
Perhaps the alcohol helped.
I can't see how at that time of day or morning or night or whatever that alcohol would help you stay awake. But that was the first match.
Good match.
And
Good
Becky
match.
won because we want to see Becky and Rhea. I want to see the top girls in major matches that can actually perform. I don't want to see a fucking cast of goddamn chorus girls out there looking like deer on ice doing shit that guys ought to be doing.
Well, good match. Tiffany Stratton looked really good in there. And
in where? What are you insinuating?
No, she was doing good. She did a moonsault at one point. Well, apparently Raquel had some kind of flare-up of I think a skin condition. That's why she looked a little out of sorts. But she, like a true professional, toughed it out. and competed. And
Naomi looked a little green around the gills, too.
You know, it sucks when she can't do her glow-in-the-dark dancing.
Because it was daylight.
Trancing thing, yeah. Beautiful sunset during the next match, though, but...
That's all I was watching during the next match was the sunset.
I guess the question is, if you look at where things are, and you have someone like Rhea Ripley, who is, in my eyes, for what I enjoy, the best there's ever been. As far as a women's wrestler. She gets it. And even some of the matches that aren't like classics, what she does in them draws you in. She's really good. At the same time, you have a lot of people that are okay. You have some that are over. But if there are matches where the crowd is silent, it's typically the women's matches for both companies. A whole different problem in AEW. But WWE has at least professional women, and Maxine Dupree out there doing her thing. But it's almost like the Alundra Blaze versus Bull Nakano being the entire division for a year and a half or whatever, that's too small, but maybe everything else is too big. Like if you have the best, like a Rhea Ripley, and you have a Bianca Belair, who in my eyes is right up there, just really, really great. Like you want them to have people to feud with, but you don't need just tons of people running around if they're not over. Then you're trying to stack a division that isn't over, but there are some people in it that are. I don't know. I wonder about these things.
Yes, it keeps you up at night, I can tell. Well, anyway, so Becky's on to WrestleMania to wrestle the winner, wrestle at WrestleMania to wrestle the winner of the main event tonight with Rhea Ripley and Refrigerator Jax, which is going to go on last, and more on that later. Okay, the next match was the tag team title contest, and this was the quickest turnaround of the night. The bell for the tag team title match started only 14 minutes after the end of the previous match. So they were moving there. And I just noticed him and I couldn't take my eyes off him. I don't know if he always does this, if I don't pay attention, what show he's on or whatever, but the ring announcer. Rare WWE mistake. They let him dress like an indie clown and he's got the weird hair and he's got to be 6'5" anyway, so he looked like some kind of game show host out there doing a special ring announcer fucking spot. But does this fucking idiot dress like that all the time and I haven't noticed?
Yeah, I think so.
Oh, Christ. All right, well, I'd fire him. He's not a goddamn performer. He's a ring announcer. He's not.
You can tell him to dress differently. You don't have to fire him.
I'd fire him for not knowing his place and showing up like that. The fuck's the matter with you? You think you're the fucking star around here? Get the fuck out of here. Ring announcer should be heard and only seen to be heard.
Should Howard Finkel have been allowed to express himself instead of just wearing a tuxedo?
No. Every once in a while there has been a local personality that could get away. Boyd Pierce, because everybody knew him and everybody loved him and he was the folksy fella and he could get away with something like that. But you don't want just every generic fucking nitwit announcer that you've got dressing like a goddamn one of the boys. They're not gimmicks. They're fucking announcers. This guy's hair anyway, he ought to be fucking beaten about the head and face. Anyway, so it was the WWE Tag Team title, Damian Priest and Finn Balor against Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. And again, I honestly would have skipped this, but there's only 4 matches on the fucking show because apparently they didn't want to fly anybody over to Australia to fill this card out. And I'll watch it for a tag team match just to see the performance because, again, I mentioned this before, the Hart Foundation, the Rockers, the Bulldogs, the Steiners, the Road Warriors, the Midnight Express, the Rock and Roll Express, Tully Blanchard, and Arn Anderson, Demolition, on and on and on and on and on. And there's Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne. They ruined Pete Dunne when Vince was still there and he went through his Charles Dickens fetish phase and made him butch. And I don't see how you recover from that. And Tyler Bate, yeah, they were all working hard and he's a wonderful young little athlete, but he looks like Fuzzy Cupid. He made Finn Balor look like a fucking giant. And the short legs and odd-shaped torso. These Bate and Dunn, I'm sure they could do well on the UK independent scene. They could be probably great talents for an Impact or, high-level indie tag team because they do nice stuff. But look at them. They don't have a gimmick. They don't have a look. As I said, Tyler Bate reaches up when he hits the ropes to get his arm over it. And their name is the New Catch Republic. What the fuck is that? That sounds like a Czechoslovakian fucking political group.
Well, catch wrestling, right?
No, nobody knows that. And what does that have to do with the Republic? And why are they new? Was there an old Catch Republic? They're microcasting to their indie niche UK indie show fucking audience. And, so that's... Anyway, Damian Priest looked like Andre in the middle of this. And it looked like a squash match where they forgot to tell the jobbers that they were getting squashed. And then at that point, it transitioned to a lot of action basically to prove that Finn and Priest can't beat preliminary guys. And then it just, they went false finish after false finish, and they kicked out of more of the heel shit. And finally, Priest and Finn were going to double team the guy where Priest had him up for a power bomb and Finn was going to come off the top rope or whatever. And Bate Hurricane Rana's Priest toward the turnbuckle where Finn is on, and it's going to be like Priest headbutts Finn in the nuts and crotches him, but Priest stumbled because the guy went down with him. So he had to crawl on his hands and knees and then stand up under Finn Balor and nut him on purpose with his head. Because they were getting too complicated. Doing shit they can't do smoothly to try to get these guys over. When it's a fucking lost cause, a moot point, and a goddamn fool's errand. Because the only people that like Tyler Bate and Pete Dunne in this presentation are the fans that they've got from England that liked them when they were a big deal over there. They're not a big deal here. And the state of tag team wrestling. Anyway, the babyfaces double team Priest to death in front of the referee. Finn disappeared for a good while, but then finally, Priest double choke slammed both of them, and Finn came off the top with the double stomp to Pete Dunne in 18 minutes. 18 minutes of a glorified TV match. So I don't know what was worst about this show is that either the matches, once they ended, it took forever to get the next one started, or once that match got started, it would never fucking end. Your thoughts?
I can't add too much to that. The sunset was gorgeous during this match. Whenever they had the wide shot and you got to see the sky, oh, it was just magical. And the match, I mean, they have a tag team division with very few main event kind of teams. If you look at the 80s, just WWF, not even talking about what you guys were doing. Heart Foundation, Demolition, Killer Bees, British Bulldogs, Islanders, fucking Conquistadors, everyone was like a big-sized athlete. It does stand out. You said what I thought at one point when Bate was there next to Finn Balor, who is a smaller guy. He looks so much bigger than him. It's hard to even figure out how tall the guy must be. Is he 5'4"? I don't know, but
Google Fuzzy Cupid, kids.
I think a lot of the guys who have been in the NXT system for a while are getting their shot on the main roster, whether it's Gargano and Ciampa or these two guys, and I thought Butch was working pretty good, actually, for him. We'll see.
Well, then they had a package of the Bloodline saga with the up-to-date, business with The Rock and what Cody's been involved in. And Do you think it was after this segment, Brian? I think you mentioned something like this before we went on the air, that the people realized that the bloodline's not even in the fucking building.
I heard from a few people there that there was an issue with that. There was also an issue where I guess the timers were going off on different sides of the building at different times during the Elimination Chamber, so the countdown would happen and then nothing would happen, which caused them. Yeah, which was weird. I mean, you heard it happen a few times on the show, but yeah, I think this was kind of around the time people realized, oh shit, we're not getting anything from the bloodline. Not that they were billed to be there, but.
Well, but, goddamn, when you're in a fucking stadium and 50,000 people, one would think that they would have. Anyway, we're an hour and a half into the pay-per-view, and we've seen 2 matches, and now Austin Theory is in the ring to do a quick promo where he knocks Vegemite and says he went to Outback for a bloomin' onion, and boy, that's making me hungry. And then he introduced Grayson Waller, who apparently Waller is from this country, if not Perth itself, somewhere in this godforsaken land that birthed Grayson Waller and spawned him on us. So at this point, they're going to do the Grayson Waller effect. I fast forwarded it until somebody else came out. And that was Seth Franklin Rollins. And here he comes, and by the time he gets the ring, he just sits down. And then here comes Cody. And he gets the ring, and he sits down. And, well, he didn't sit down at first. He asked the people, hey, Perth, what do you want to talk about? 11 minutes into this segment before Cody said a fucking word. It was just Theory introducing Waller, Waller mouthing off, and then the entrances.
They need to bring back the ring cars if they're going to do stadiums like this to get people to the ring in 30 seconds or less.
Yes, yes. Except Bobby Heenan hated that fucking WrestleMania 3 cart because he said that they were raised, they were elevated. It was only going like 10 miles an hour so the people could fucking catch him with all the stuff they were throwing.
Yeah, if you watch, because Andre is a heel, he's the biggest heel in the company at that time, and he's waving. You're like, why is he waving to the fans? He's actually just trying to move his hand back and forth to block things being thrown at him.
But anyway, so Cody cuts him. Oh, Seth first, he announced that he's days away from being medically cleared to wrestle. So good, since they've been advertising he was going to already defend his title on WrestleMania anyway. And then Cody kind of talked about The Rock and, got all the Cody crybabies there to cheer for him. And I just wrote, nothing is happening here. I've seen fossils form at a quicker pace. And then Cody told The Rock that he's wide open till WrestleMania and he wants a one-on-one match with The Rock anytime, any place, anywhere. And of course, they got to do that or something like it at some point. And then Seth tells Cody that there's no one-on-one with the bloodline involved. If Rock takes his challenge, then Cody, I just want you to know and everybody know you won't be alone. And people kind of cheer that.
Yeah, we've established that, haven't we?
We've established it. But not in Australia. Because they're on, well, you've heard of Greenwich Mean Time?
Yeah.
They're on Australia Pissy Time. So then Theory steps up and starts healing on Cody and Seth and starts doing the Rocksmith. It doesn't matter what you think, blah, blah, blah. And then Cody and Seth just beat up Theory and give him their moves. And Waller stood back and let him do it. Obviously, like, he shouldn't have spoke up, I guess. And that was the end of it. In 20 fucking minutes. I've seen people have conversations on airplanes that was more exciting. What? For a stadium for 50,000 people? That's all they got?
It's amazing. It's also amazing, until AJ Styles appears later on, it's amazing they flew these guys over just to do this in a stadium, but yeah, it's the formula they have and it's working. Give the people very little with the idea that maybe there'll be more next time.
And then the next time there's even less.
But there could be more the next time. And then it keeps repeating. Yeah.
Then they've fallen into the hole and then they're standing above it saying it puts the lotion on the skin or else it gets the hose again.
with such enthusiasm, I've never heard it said.
Well, you got to look over the edge there, you know. Anyway, so then the entrances began, ladies and gentlemen, for the dreaded, dangerous, deadly Elimination Chamber. And that match featured Kevin Owens versus Bobby Lashley versus Logan Paul versus Randy Orton versus Drew McIntyre versus L.A. Knight, with everybody saying it. And I'll have you know, Brian, that I went back and double-checked this. I wanted to make sure my figures. Match number 3 began, the bell rang to start that match 54 minutes after the end of match number 2. They had almost an hour in between the end of match number 2 and the start of match number 3, between the exits and the spots and the tourist videos and the goofiness and the interview segment and more entrances. It was literally a 1-hour television program with no fucking wrestling in the middle of the pay-per-view.
We always say, imagine SmackDown without all those pesky commercials.
No, we still got commercials.
Well, not in the middle of the match. Not in the middle of the match.
Well, pretty much goddamn everywhere else. So anyway.
And by the way, how's that tourism thing going to work out? Who's going to go, you know what? We needed a place to go. And Australia looks great. They sponsored wrestling. Let's go.
Yeah, I got in Champaign, Illinois, sitting there thinking, you know, fuck goddamn Chicago. Let's just go over to Australia. Anyway, here's what happened in this match. And there was nothing, these guys are all talents. Some great, some merely just okay, whatever. But they're all talents. They're all stars. They're all over. They weren't doing amateur shit and, you know, dropping and botching and falling all over each other. But there's no way to put a match like this together where it makes sense or it means anything from start to finish, with the ebbs and the flows, the peaks and the valleys of an athletic contest where you're pulling for one side and and cheering against the other. In this aspect, it's guys doing moves to each other until somebody wins, like all the multi-man matches. This one just has a bigger budget and a more elaborate set. But also it puts everybody in the modern wrestling position that guys in the territory days and throughout the history of wrestling would never been caught dead being put in, baby faces, is that baby faces have to fight baby faces, but they treat them just like they're heels. And that makes the baby face that's doing that no better than a heel himself. I will elaborate with some type of detail so you might understand. In days gone by, if a babyface was to compete with another babyface in the ring in any kind of match, and I've talked about this before, they wouldn't immediately start taking chairs and hitting each other over the head or punching each other in the face or trying to, you know, to put each other through furniture and end their careers or whatever the fuck. But today's modern baby faces, when they're working with another baby face, they do the same shit to them as they do to heels. Maybe heels they have an issue with, or heels that have done something to them in the past to elicit, or is where, fuck you, I'm going to kick you in the balls straight off. Do you see what I'm saying, Brian? And then when the fan likes both the baby faces, it disappoints him in one of them, does it not? That the other guy is acting that way. Why does he want to fucking kill goddamn Farquhar there? He's never done anything to him, but he's, you know, taking a turnbuckle hook and he's trying to pull his intestines out. Am I overthinking this?
Maybe a tad. I mean, this is the Elimination Chamber. You have to have baby faces and heels interact with each other like the Royal Rumble.
And nobody has any goddamn psychology anymore.
The highlight of the match for me wasn't even something they showed on TV. You could see it in the background if you look for it after the fact. There's a video I saw, must have been a Logan Paul.
Paul drawing on the Elimination Chamber, fat pictures of Steen.
The running commentary, and then they cut it, and the next thing you see is Steen slamming his head into the thing.
Yeah.
That was the best thing in the whole match, and it wasn't even WWE's. It was the way that was edited and how it was put together. It was great.
Well, but also Logan Paul is a fucking natural. He's a goddamn, just a natural. But the way they did this, LA Knight and Drew started. And good action, and there's an issue, and LA Knight looks good. And the way that they were shooting with the newish camera angles and because of the chamber and etc., a very big league look. And then Owens was next in, number 3, and he makes a comeback and starts fucking with Logan Paul in the other pod, and that's where the interaction was going on. Basically, the only thing I want to see more out of this match is Logan Paul and Kevin Owens, because they were the interesting component of this. And as we just mentioned, Logan Paul some way got a black Sharpie or whatever, and he's drawing and writing backwards. Like Owens is fat, and pictures of Owens with a fucking, like one of the weebles that wobble you fill with sand, but they won't fall over. And that was great stuff. And then number 4 was Lashley, and he comes in and beats up Drew, but that's now we're starting the parts where 2 guys just have to just lay out forever. And because it's a elimination chamber and a cage, they can't even lay out on the floor or under the apron or whatever. You see them just laying there forever while other guys are doing their predetermined, prearranged routines. And so you can't make notes on how this match went because it's guys doing moves to each other back and forth. You can't follow a story. But when Orton came in number 5, business picked up because he's over. People want to see him. He knows how to make a comeback. And then he DDT'd Owens on the platform and sold his back, and that was a story through the whole deal. And at one point here later on, I made note that Orton was the smartest guy in this match because he came in, all of his shit works, nobody ever kicks out of the RKO. He hurt himself doing his own move, but doing it on a hard surface, and everybody knows he's got a bad back, so he was able to sell that and do less in this match than anybody else, but get more response. He was and had a perfect out when he was eliminated. Is the smartest guy in the match. If either they're taking care of him, which I know they are, they're taking care of him, but it has to be him also. Nobody's telling him all that stuff. He picked up a lot of things at his 20 years in the business or whatever. And then number 6 was Logan Paul, and Owens gets right in front of the door. And now Logan Paul's looking like, uh-oh, and doesn't want the door to open and tries to close it when it does. And Owens opened it up and laid into him and closed the door behind him like they're having a fight in a phone booth and blah, blah, blah. And Owens was all over him. And then Logan Paul fought back, but everybody else was laying immobile. And then finally Lashley comes back and spears Logan Paul through the door of the pod, which again looks good until they do that probably another 5 times. And then everybody will yawn about that one. And then finally Lashley was about to fucking do something to somebody, I believe, and Drew hit the Claymore kick on him and beat Lashley 1, 2, 3. So he's out. And as soon as that happens, LA Knight gets a flurry and hits his finish on Orton and then hits his finish on Drew and looks like he's going to cover somebody. And suddenly AJ Styles is standing there whacking LA Knight with a fucking chair. And the announcer's like, where did he come from? You're in a fucking stadium. The ring is 500 feet away from the goddamn locker room. You couldn't see him coming? With spotlights of goddamn energy power company of Perth was strained to the gills with all those lights. And there was no place that you couldn't see somebody coming to the ring. And AJ Styles comes into the cage that they've had the door open for Lashley. And the announcers, well, the referees can't do anything. It's no disqualification. This is the living epitome and example of bullshit. The wrong kind of heat, the heat that goes on to promotion. I don't care if it's no DQ. And we're going to see some more of that here in a minute. You can't just blatantly, it kills the cage. It kills the stipulation of the cage. It kills the goddamn credibility of the referees. It gets heat on the promotion. It's not in any way cleverly done. It's just, a guy not in a match runs out in an impregnable cage, finds a way to get in, and beats LA Knight 10 times over the fucking back with a chair. And then Drew just hits him and gives him a Styles Clash on the chair. And then Drew just covers him 1, 2, 3. That's where I said to myself, this is getting burdensome to watch. Do you see what I'm saying about that one?
I agree with you.
There's got to be a way to do it more artfully than that and just make everybody pissed off at the company instead of the heel that's perpetrating what should be an evil, insidious, and creative attack, and instead is just, he just came in and beat him down in front of everybody. And then finally, Orton hit the RKO on Owens and pinned him 1, 2, 3. And then Drew and Orton got in a fight, and then Orton and Logan Paul got in a fight. And then everybody was selling as we passed 30 minutes in this match. And then Logan Paul pulls out brass knucks, and the announcer's again, no DQ. Then why didn't somebody bring a Smith & Wesson? Could have been over quicker and easier on everybody. But Logan Paul pulls out the brass knucks, and now it's no DQ, but as he's holding them up, showing them to everybody, like, as soon as I finish showing them to all of you, I'm going to cheat and win the match. Orton RKO's him out of nowhere, 1, 2, 3. I know he's a heel, but I just wish Logan didn't have to look that fucking, well, I guess he's inexperienced too. So he's an inexperienced heel so he can look stupid.
And it's not stupid, he's flashy. He embraces being a heel in character, and he wants the audience to see exactly how heelish he is.
Well, the flashy is standing there for about 5 seconds showing him the knucks and then turning around and getting to business. Stupid is standing there for about 20 to 25 seconds before Orton comes and RKO's him.
He's my favorite person in this match. He was great.
Yes, Logan Paul, he may be one of my favorite people on the whole fucking roster.
He definitely is one of my favorite people in the roster. I just want to see more of him in one-on-one stuff, promo-wise and match-wise.
And stuff he can learn from instead of, this type of...
He's great, though. He's one of my very favorite in the whole business.
But then we were left, then there were two. Randy Orton and Drew McIntyre. And Orton's still selling his back. And he's so good at it because he can sell it, but he can still do his stuff. But even when he's doing the stuff, you can tell he's still being hampered. And they go back and forth, and Drew's got him set up after a spine buster for the Claymore, but Orton can't get to his feet. And then Drew's stalking him and staring at him and standing there as Orton is struggling to his feet and pulling himself up by Drew's knee pad. And it looks like Orton's a goner. Drew's about to do something, and Orton jumps up and hits the RKO out of nowhere, trademark. And he gets a big pop, and then Logan Paul is still in the cage. And I guess everybody in the stadium could see that, but they're disguising it with the camera angles when AJ came in and that Logan Paul was still there. So it's somewhat a surprise on camera, but it had to piss those stadium fans off that were seeing the whole picture because Logan Paul's still in the ring and he just takes the knucks and knocks Orton out. And then he leaves and Drew covers him. And the referee counts it. And the fans were pissed. Again, the wrong kind of heat done in front of the referee. The heat goes on the referee, as the old timers used to say, but more now it goes on the promotion because it's lazy booking. And again, if some way the referee couldn't have seen Logan Paul do it, but when the referee is standing there, the guy who's already been eliminated takes a foreign object, knocks their hero out, And then the referee counts it. People are bullshit. So wrong. People would not buy tickets to see next week's rematch if this was the territory days. Luckily, the WWE is now in position where they only have rematches in the same town maybe once a fucking year. But a bullshit finish. 37 minutes of this match that we waited almost an hour to see the start of. And then the main players get taken out by either somebody that's not in the match at all or somebody that's not in the match anymore, blatantly in front of the referees with foreign fucking objects, and, oh, you can't do anything because there's no DQ. Well, then they painted themselves in the wrong silo corner.
Well, that really sums it up, doesn't it?
Are you getting bored with me?
Not with you, but with WWE. You know, when the stuff hits, it hits great. But a lot of stuff just feels like it's just holding everything in place. But like you said, it took a while to... Well, WrestleMania 3 was like 3 hours and it was like 13 matches. And I'm not saying we should go back to 8-minute matches or 6-minute matches up and down the card, but they used to be a card. I mean, we're going back 100 years now where there was 2-3 matches on a show and an interview.
And that's the thing is that, again, we're not saying there should be 13 matches like in AEW. There's a big difference between 4 and 13 and everything takes, and this is the simplest, most simplistic way outs. And yes, it's working for them, but good Lord, it's a chore for the discerning fan to muddle through. And we've got one more big event to go, and I'll explain why that was the main event in a moment. But first, Triple H was in the ring to announce the official attendance and thank everybody. 52,590 people. And that's the point I was going to make that goes into what you just said. I can understand if it was just an in-your-house pay-per-view in 95 in Poughkeepsie just to have the show, but a stadium in front of 50,000 people with all of the, and however much money they got paid by the Australian Tourism Commission. And they couldn't move anything along better or give them more variety than what happened here. That's my problem. So we get to the main event. For the women's world title, Rhea Ripley versus Refrigerator Jax. And we all know why they put this match on last, because Rhea Ripley is Australian. It's her home country. Her whole family was in the front row. And normally, fuck your family and fuck your hometown if you're not over, but she's over. She's better over than any woman in the fucking company. So they put this match on last because it was her triumphant homecoming. However, the opponent, unfortunately, I felt so bad for Rhea Ripley. She gets to main event in a stadium in front of a crowd like that in her home country, but the other half of the Faustian bargain is that she has to have a match with an almost immobile, untalented, completely charismaless performer who's going to botch it up right and left. And this, can you imagine if Charlotte was healthy? They would have set this stadium on, people would have been having heart attacks and babies in the audience. Possibly at the same time. But this was like Ray Stevens versus Mabel, was it not?
I don't think it was necessarily that bad.
It was like Shawn Michaels versus Plowboy Frazier.
Or Shawn Michaels versus Mabel, if you wanted to go to just a direct comparison to what you said before. It was, I mean, what did you, it's Nia Jax. She does her Nia, she wrestles like a big, Haystacks Calhoun type of.
But no, I'm not even taking, if they had Awesome Kong during her TNA years in that part of her career versus Rhea Ripley. A malevolent, aggressive monster heel that could do shit and had personality and had aggression. Rhea Ripley would have looked like Riggy Morton, right? That would have been great. I'm not just talking about Refrigerator Jax's excessive fucking resemblance to a goddamn Barca lounger. I'm talking about there's nothing there. She can't talk with emotion. She has that sable voice. Her work is blah. She's not coordinated. She can't be a monster. She just drops her weight on people. And the introductions? There were no weights announced. What else has she got? They should announce at 150 whatever pounds from Australia, Rhea Ripley, and at 336 pounds from wherever the fuck she's at, Refrigerator Jax. And then there's the verbal reinforcement that this goddamn huge giant monolith is so much bigger than our hero Rhea. But they don't announce their weights at all. What other attribute has Jax got besides that? Nothing. She looks like a recliner wrapped in pleather.
Speaking of Mabel, the outfit of Mabel.
Yes, and when she missed the big sit-down butt drop, the fans were chanting "my hole," because that's still a joke from her doing that a couple of years ago. And Rhea couldn't do her shit here because you can't do it to fucking Jax. It's not possible. And if Rhea Ripley could not sell as wonderfully as she can, this would have been a total loss, because that's what, she had to sell, fight from underneath, make a little comeback, and get shut down again. And she can't make a decent comeback because this girl can't fucking bump. And then they went so long. Nia hits the Samoan drop off the second rope and gets a 2 count. And then she goes for the bonsai, but Rhea comes up underneath her and shoulder rides her for a second, puts her into the turnbuckle, and then frog splash her, gets a 2 count. Okay, that's fine. But then we go to the floor, and Nia is giving her the fucking drop on the desk and an elbow drop through the desk, even though... Did you see when Rhea's laying on the announce desk and Nia Jax gets up in one of the announce chairs that has wheels on it, and she's still only at the same level of the goddamn top of the announce desk, and she flies off of that with an elbow drop, and it looked like she actually was lower to the ground than when she jumped before she landed. She can't even get up off the fucking ground. And so finally, Jax goes to the top, and Rhea catches her and gives her the shortest superplex in history, because she can't fall. She can't push off the top and fall, can Nia Jax. And then Rhea gives her the kick to the head and the riptide. 1, 2, 3. And poor Rhea. They put her through 16 minutes of hell. Every unnaturally large, fat person cannot be a professional wrestler. We've talked about in the past many times, promoters have been able to steal a house out of a big schlub once or twice, but no, not on this level with this visibility. In Cleveland, if this had been the main event, people would have been leaving to beat the traffic. They prospered that it was Rhea's home country, but boy, I felt so bad for her. She can do so much more than this. And it just, if she was not a good worker, I'm talking about Jax, if she wasn't a good worker and had no more mobility, but she had menace and presence and was a big fucking malevolent heel, as I said, that'd be one thing. But just this plodding blah, Plus, the show was 3.5 hours long. We had an hour and 45 minutes of wrestling.
I thought Rhea looked good. I thought she got the most out of Nia Jax as you could. Had her family at ringside. They made a big deal of that. When she threw Rhea on the announce desk, I have to go back and see it. It was almost like, because one of the monitors or iPads, whatever they use at this point, was standing up straight. It looked like she landed right on top of it.
And that's, everybody does that now. It doesn't stand out. Nobody remembers it because, as we'll talk about when we get to AEW, sometimes matches these days you see on TV have 5 or 6 tables in the same match. It's just useless, meaningless. but you can get hurt.
And to the WWE's, I guess, credit, not really their credit, but the fans seem to leave happy. I mean, we could say whatever we want about how boring the event was or whatever you felt about it at home. The fans there seem to be happy with Rhea Ripley being in the main event and getting the win.
Well, of course. And because this is the first big show in Australia the biggest show ever in Australia, probably, and the first big one in many of these people's memories as fans, right? They've been there before, but not on this stage. And they never get something like this, so they were jacked for it. They were going to like it unless, the fucking whole building blew up. And I don't blame them for being hand. They got to go and see everybody in person and get the merchandise and experience the atmosphere, blah, blah, blah. If you were in America and got to see, if you chose to, if you wanted to, multiple major shows a year near you, you might not have been as fucking thrilled. And that's only natural also. But as a television broadcast, this was incredibly, incredibly slow to watch. We could agree on that, right?
Yeah, we can. And it's incredible the idea that you could have a stadium show and draw 50,000 people with 4 matches, 5 matches, whatever it is, in a giant interview segment. That's all it takes.
Yeah.
Even Bill Watson, the Superdome for his biggest shows, loaded with people being brought in. Dusty Rhodes, Hogan and Andre were on the show with JYD and Michael Hayes. There were lots of attractions. It wasn't just like, all right, here's our 4 biggest matches from TV.
Well, but here's the complete difference, because now the majority of the tickets for these big events are sold before the card or the people on it are even announced. Whereas in the territory days, even on a major show like the Superdome, your advance would maybe be 25% of the walk-up you would get between 4 and 8 o'clock that day. Maybe a little bit more, even on a big show. On spot shows, it was a 10th of the crowd you'd end up with. Those people waited until they knew what the card was going to be. Do we want to see these matches? They would see the last week or two of go-home TVs, an angle would hit them, and they'd say, well, it's not like the Superdome was going to sell out. And especially if people were an hour away or whatever, they say, well, we'll drive down there and see that show. We'll get there early so we can get a good seat. But now that for Wembley, AEW, they sold the tickets before they knew what they were going to see. And they've done it again. Only half as many, but that's the same principle. And no matter what's on the card or added to the card, except if it's a Rock level or Cena level type thing, nothing really picks up at the end anyway. It's just whether or not people are going to go out of their way to watch it on television or the cock or whatever.
Yeah, we saw it a few years ago at Ring of Honor in New Japan when they ran the Garden, and the tickets sold out before anything was announced, and then a lot of the wrestlers that people assumed were going to be there, the Elite, for instance, weren't there. They were somewhere else, so you got a card
They wasn't even there.
So you bought tickets for a show thinking you were going to get something, and you got none of that.
Well, that's it. In these cases, in the case of Wembley, in the case of Perth here, in a case of a first-time thing somewhere, they're just buying a ticket to be there for the first big thing, and they're hoping the card's going to be good. Again, in the territory days when wrestling was regular, live in every city in America on a regular basis, if people didn't like the matches, the lineup, the angles that were going on TV, they didn't want to see the fucking who was going to win, they just wouldn't go. But you wouldn't know until the day of the show, because under the best of circumstances, your day of show crowd was going to end up being 3 or 4 times what your advance was. That's no longer the case.
All right. Yeah, the business is now all advance, pretty much.
That's because as soon as I'm sitting, the next thing is going to be they're going to start bringing the tickets back. They buy the tickets now when they don't know what they're going to see, and then they find out what the card is. The next step is they find out what the card is. They start getting refunds for the tickets. Because as soon as you tell them what they're going to see, the fucking ticket sales pretty much come to a grinding halt, don't they?
Yeah, they announced Sting's retirement, no match. It's sold out just on the strength, or almost sold out on the strength of just Sting's retirement.
Then they announced what the match was going to be, and everybody's been complaining about it since then.
Well, they're stuck. They already got their ticket, and we were stuck, and that was WWE Elimination Chamber. This is your show.